Welcome to Myth Informed. I'm your host, Michael Karish, and my co-host here, Brian Edwards. And our guest today is Niko House, who is the host of the Mi Casa es Su Casa podcast on YouTube, and a avid Tulsi supporter, an avid Bernie supporter, a proclaimed progressive, just an all-around awesome dude, and he's a military veteran, so watch out. Here he is, Niko House.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Doing good. Doing real good.
Yeah, so what do they say? Don't bet against the house?
The house always wins.
The house always wins, right? I mean, you've got it rigged.
Well, I mean, at least when it comes to predicting political outcomes, I like to think that I'm pretty accurate. I was like, it was our network that said that if Tulsi makes the first debate stage, she'll be the most Googled candidate. And then you'll start seeing donations roll in. We also said that Tulsi would probably go after Kamala Harris, and once she does, it's over for Kamala. We were also the ones predicted way back in February. We kept telling progressives, like, okay, if you actually want a progressive to win this election, stop pushing Elizabeth Warren, because that is their trump card. If Biden doesn't peg out, which we all kind of anticipated would happen, we said if Kamala doesn't work out, then Elizabeth Warren is their last hope, and they know that, and they're counting on progressives to be fooled by this, this image she portrays of herself as being a progressive, and we saw through that from the very beginning. All the stuff that people are figuring out about Elizabeth Warren taking corporate donations, we broke a lot of that news back in February and March. So, I like to think we're pretty accurate. I wouldn't bet, as far as figuring out who's on our team and who isn't on our team and what the mainstream media is going to do. I feel like we're top tier when it comes to that, at least.
And you broke the story on the DNC's rigging. You broke it to Jordan Sheridan. I watched that video where you were interviewing with the Humanist Report. Yeah, all the way back then, you had it. You knew what you were talking about.
I was actually the one who broke the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund information. Found out through a former North Carolina Democratic Party treasurer. I apologize. And we found out because basically, while through fundraising, they were actually going to call their PAC the Victory PAC for the progressives, and the DNC for the state of North Carolina wouldn't allow it because they didn't want the funds to accidentally get donated into that instead of the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, which was specifically for establishment candidates. And so that's how I was like, whoa, what's that? So I started looking into the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, and that's how we found out. I think it was like the 32 states that were taking money from the Democratic Party and basically laundering it through various super PACs back into the DNC and back into Hillary Clinton's campaign.
And where's that supposed to go? Like, how is this supposed to run? Like, what would you describe as fair?
So technically, it's especially that one. It's supposed to be just for Hillary Clinton's campaign. So they do different fundraisers for that cause. They may run ads for Hillary. And it's very explicit. That wasn't the issue. I mean, it's still an issue, but like legally and ethically, that wasn't as much of the issue as they were basically bribing state Democratic parties to do what Hillary Clinton desired.
Okay.
And also to do to not only when it comes to her campaign, but how other campaigns would be funded as well. Because state Democratic parties do a lot of fundraising for their, for those campaigns.
Okay. So instead of fundraising for all the Democratic candidates, they were fundraising specifically for Hillary?
For Hillary. Oh, yes. Yeah. For the presidential race. Absolutely. Only for Hillary.
Okay. But now, how is that different than normal, kind of political networking and building? Because, normally if I'm going to say, hey, you're going to endorse me, I've got to do something for them, well, I'll support you, or I'll come out, do talk or speech.
Yeah. So it's different because, as you all know, there's a maximum amount you can donate to an individual campaign. That's for every level, whether it be presidential, state level, municipal level, it doesn't matter. They all have their limits. The thing is, we know that super PACs, they're 501c4, they can have unlimited money raised, and that money does not necessarily have to be reported as long as the money, I think 51% of it is spent on its political expenditures. So if you're even they have limits to how much they can donate to Hillary Clinton's campaign, and how connected Hillary Clinton's campaign can be directly to that super PAC. So what they do instead is that, specifically the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, is that they funneled this money into various Democratic parties, right? Who could then, in various ways, spend that money on the Hillary Clinton campaign, quote joint fundraisers with Hillary and whoever the establishment pick is at that time, and those events cost money, right? Consultants cost money, so maybe if this campaign is a pro quote unquote pro Hillary campaign, they may have otherwise not had enough money to hire that top notch consultant. This Hillary Clinton Victory Fund allows them to do that as long as they remember along the way, you need to endorse Hillary Clinton. You need to be out there campaigning for Hillary Clinton. When Hillary Clinton comes to your town, your schedule is clear. That's who you're campaigning with this entire time. Whenever we got to take another candidate out, perhaps a progressive candidate, maybe someone running for Congress, you need to be willing to go for the jugular and echo whatever criticism that Hillary Clinton might be okay with, or that Hillary Clinton's establishment might be okay with. There are a lot of different ways. But primarily, it was just a joint fundraising effort that was completely illegitimate, just based off of the fact that the parties were only fundraising for one candidate. So if you are incentivized to only support one candidate, then what comes next? We already know the answer to that: election rigging, electioneering. You're more willing to tamper with those machines for that candidate. You're more willing to, because you just bet on the house, and God forbid you lose, and somebody found out that you were doing something unethical or illegal, then you may be held accountable. So now you're incentivized to make sure that candidate wins at all costs, and we've seen how that unfolds, whether it be the Democratic Party or Republican Party. Republican Party had something similar happen in North Carolina that they're dealing with, so it's not limited to one party or the other.
Yeah. Now, you think they're actually rigging the voting machines? I mean, clearly I can see like an unethical playing field here where, you're going all in, you're trying to push one candidate over the other, you have a clear bias. Okay, but rigging actually, so that's kind of like disturbing. It's unprincipled, but rigging, I mean, like if you're actually playing with the voting machine, that's hardcore illegal.
Have you ever heard of fraction magic? Because
No.
that's what it originated from. Basically, no matter how many votes are counted, one candidate is limited at a certain percentage of those votes, and the other candidate is always going to have at least a certain percentage of the entire vote. It's what is believed to happen to Tim Canova's race this time around, where you had a situation where no matter how many votes were counted, in some cases, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was getting, like, the more votes that were counted overall, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Tim Canova were getting less votes. And we were actually we had screenshots of this stuff. Like, so we were watching it in real time, watching the screenshots. You had a situation with Jill Stein, who obviously ran as third party Green Party candidate in 2016, where she sued because she had a suspicion that there was something going on where there were Green Party candidates in Michigan that were getting more total votes than Jill Stein was getting in the entire state. Michigan is one of the most popular Green Party states, so she went out on a limb and assumed that there was rigging one way or the other being committed by one of the parties.
In theory,
turned out she was right and won a lawsuit in Pennsylvania, and now Pennsylvania has to have mandatory hand-counted paper ballots because of the machines were rigged and couldn't be reconciled.
They couldn't reconcile. But yeah, because you could think, you might vote, normal candidate for presidency because it's a bigger deal, and then you could vote green in your state election, local elections. There was a lot of people too that voted in their state and local elections that didn't vote for president at all in 2016 because they didn't like either candidate, and then didn't want to vote third party because maybe they didn't know anything about them. Yeah,
but you're talking about like a state legislator getting more votes than a presidential candidate in one of the most popular states for that presidential candidate. I actually had the pleasure of introducing Jill Stein at her Michigan rally in Detroit, where she had like 300-400 people just in that rally on a last minute's notice. When, like I said, when you're getting state candidates that are, getting 900 to 1,000 votes, and say Jill Stein got like 700. That doesn't really make any sense, considering that the voting for that state candidate is limited to a district. And Jill Stein, of course, had the entire state at her disposal. And once again, in the biggest county, Wayne County, where Detroit is, that's where the majority of the machines couldn't be reconciled in Michigan. And of course, who runs that district? The Democrats do. And that's the problem with whenever people want to talk about party politics, we should just prop up another party. And I'm like, okay, then what? We still have fallible, imperfect human beings that are going to game the system to maintain power as long as humanly possible. That's why we really have to bust down this entire system and reinstate things like ranked choice voting, which a few states have already.
What's the policy? What's this again?
Ranked choice voting.
What's that?
Where so basically you have generally like 1 through 4. You go through one round of voting, and then whoever it makes the top 2. And by the way, I'm simplifying this, but whoever makes the top 2, they have a runoff, similar to the jungle primary in New York. But if you do ranked choice voting with a combination of open source blockchain software that can't be undone, or if there was an attempt to make it undone, we would be able to see it and audit it. That would solve 50% of our problems right here. And I like what Tulsi Gabbard suggested. She doesn't have a problem with the Electoral College staying in, at least in part. However, she believes that it shouldn't be winner take all, where some states are basically canceled out. Because if you get rid of the Electoral College and make it all popular vote, I mean, 3 states determine the outcome of the election.
Right.
3 states and the cultural influence in those states determines the outcome of an election.
I agree.
If
yeah.
you do a non-winner take all system, it makes everybody feel a little bit more represented, and every state all of a sudden begins to matter.
So you're not one of these people that wants to completely wipe the Electoral College.
No, it would be stupid to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I totally
Democrats
agree.
are using that as an excuse because they're like, oh, well, if Hillary won the popular vote, then, and if the Electoral College wasn't here, we would have Hillary. And I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. This reason right here is exactly why the Electoral College is in place. Because let's be honest, a lot of people voted for Hillary because they were susceptible to propaganda, which painted her in a better light than she actually should have been seen in. I'm on the record every day, and I'm still on the damn record. Trump is not even close to as bad as Hillary is. He couldn't be as close to as bad as Hillary is on his worst damn day because Hillary is a different type of political animal, whereas Trump could, maybe get away with business corruption. Hillary Clinton could literally get away with destroying entire countries to the point that one country has an open slave trade and people pretend like it's no big deal or we never talk about it.
What do you mean?
And that's a different.
You mean
level.
Qatar?
Libya.
No.
Yeah, exactly. People don't know Gaddafi was the elected chairman of the African Union, decided to step down to keep the West out of Africa because he, believe it or not, people don't know, he loved Africa more than anything. That Africa and the people of Africa was all he cared about protecting. And the moment that he stepped down, they knew that the region would be stabilized. The goal was always to destabilize the region. They didn't give a damn about Gaddafi. And Hillary Clinton knew that they had resources and they had the ability to be economic competition, so we took them out.
But see,
but that's Hillary Clinton.
It's weird with Gaddafi, right? This is a guy who, in the 80s, right? I mean, he was kind of a madman, right? And he was clearly supporting terrorists. Then he starts to calm down in his older age. Was he a threat in, say, 2008? When did we get him? Was it around
2014?
2014.
He was a threat to the establishment. That's who he was a threat
Okay,
to.
but he wasn't a threat to the American people via terrorism like he was in, say, 1984. And this is what
he wasn't even really a threat in 1984.
Well, the bomb.
That was a time where that was a time. So you have to understand.
We took responsibility for Pan Am.
Installed. So what happened was we actually installed a corrupt leader in Chad. And that's the part of the story that never gets told, is the fact that Gaddafi was always forced to defend himself. And we would say, oh, he's the one propping up terrorists in the region. It was always us. That's been our playbook. And then we lie and we'll say, this person is the only time that it's been true 100%, and I can say with 100% confidence that regime or that government has propped up terrorists, is Pakistan, who boasts about it proudly that they do that. 40,000 terrorists right now in Pakistan, and they were fighting in Kashmir trying to destabilize India's efforts to bring economic stability to the region. They don't have a problem. With Gaddafi, you have to take everything we've learned from the mainstream media about Gaddafi with a grain of salt, because why do we learn? We supposedly figure out that he was funding terrorists or propping up terrorists. So why don't we simultaneously learn about the fact, one, that there even is an African Union? We don't learn that in school. And then 2, he was the elected chairman of this African Union. And then 3, of course, we propped up the government that was actually funding terrorists who were sending them across the border at the behest of the United States, where Gaddafi was forced to defend himself. And then when he was forced to defend himself, what do we say? Oh, he's slaughtering his own people.
Sure.
That might sound a little bit familiar, don't you think? Maybe like what we're doing right now with Assad, who was also, once again, an economic adversary.
Yeah, okay, but let me reframe it
over and over again.
So, no, and I agree with you there. That we're playing a lot of games to get rid of Gaddafi and probably doing some unethical things, right? But no doubt, in 1984, Gaddafi is anti-U.S. He is not a friend of the U.S. He's very publicly anti-U.S. In 2010, things have changed. He is not a serious threat to our national security, which you could at least make the case in the 80s that he is. And yet we go in and topple Libya. Libya's a mess right now. And I think this is what Tulsi's talking about in regime change. I don't think there's any good reason to go after Gaddafi. I didn't like that.
None.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the documentary on Netflix, The Family?
No, I have not yet.
this plays relatively into that, because in that documentary they talk about how the family went. I forget the name of the guy, but two representatives of the family went to Libya, met with Gaddafi's chief of staff, and they started talking to him, and they in the name of God. They invoked the name of God, and all of a sudden everything was fine. He was friendly to the United States. The person went to Gaddafi and was like, "Yep, we need to be friends with the United States. They're good people.
Something changed.
We can be all friends in Jesus. We can all, like that was like, I mean, that documentary is messed up."
Right. Now, no doubt, like he's a dictator, right? But there's a lot of dictators. Like Bashar al-Assad is a dictator. Most of those countries have dictators.
Assad has one of the most coveted. I mean, they have one of the best election systems in the world. He's not a dictator.
What I'm saying,
he's not a dictator. He's absolutely not a dictator. That's like calling Maduro a dictator. And they have literally, Jimmy Carter said their election system is the standard that every country should follow. So like we can say maybe we might not like the way he may govern, but we can't just assign dictator to everybody that
fine.
the United States considers an adversary.
Certainly he's been repressive in a way that he's
a secular government. How can you? That's what I'm confused about. So how can we say that a secular? So like we have on one side, one extreme, right? We have Saudi Arabia, which is actually a repressive and oppressive government.
Yeah, it certainly is.
But on the other side of that fence, you have Assad, who is totally secular as a leader, his whole thing is we cannot act repressive for the sake of anybody, no matter what religion it is. And the whole reason that the quote unquote terrorists and the opposition didn't like him, but that opposition didn't necessarily work with terrorists, by the way, which is a whole different thing, was because they believed in a more theocratic ruling by the law of the Quran, whereas that's not, which is a little bit more repressive. I think we can all agree.
Sure.
Yep. And that's not what Assad wanted to run the country as. He wanted to make sure that the Christians had their say. He wanted to make sure that the people who don't believe in anything have their say. And he didn't want the government to be ran like the Sharia law that runs.
I agree. He's more secular.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Bashar al-Assad is part of the Ba'ath Party, yes? I believe he's part of the Ba'ath Party, and the Ba'ath Party is actually the Socialist Party in Iraq. Like,
well, that would
that's
make
a
sense.
Socialist party. They believe in the socialist values. So I mean that part of it also is.
No doubt he's more secular, right? He doesn't dress Islamically, right? He doesn't do this his same way with
his Western education.
Yeah, it's his wife. But what I'm saying is you have a lot of strong men in a lot of countries, right? And what are you going to do? Just upend? I don't think a lot of these countries are ready for democracy. I just don't think that democratizing the world is a good idea. Now, there were certain places where I think it made sense. Think Japan, right? And Germany in 1945 was a good idea to go back. Now, Germany had already had liberal traditions, so it was okay to kind of push them back from a dictatorial Nazi regime back to this. But this is not the recipe that you would need for, say, Iraq or Syria. You know, you're going to have to deal with some of these strongmen, like pure and simple. So when Tulsi got slammed for going to talk to Assad, this is absurd. We do this. Yeah. Why? What's wrong? Was she saying Bashar al-Assad is my best friend? I wish he could be. I wish he could be my vice president. No, she didn't say that. What she was saying was, like, we should analyze all the solutions, and maybe one of the solutions is keeping Assad in power. And why is that off the table? I just don't get that. I mean, when after the first Gulf War, we left Saddam in power. Why didn't we completely upend him? Because we thought maybe destabilizing this region is not going to help us, when the point was to liberate Kuwait. Right? I mean,
supposedly,
yeah, supposedly, but I mean that's the theory. So I guess I don't get why Tulsi is pounded for doing this.
You have to remember, these wars, every war since World War I has been a banker's war, right? The people recognize, I mean, it's our central bank, the Federal Reserve, even the IMF, that is petrodollar backed. It isn't the matter of necessarily, because we export, I think 93%, or excuse me, we make 93% of our own oil. We don't even need anybody else's oil at this point. We don't even need Saudi Arabia at this point. But we entertain them and we defend them and we protect them because we don't want competition either. And that's
we want an ally in the region. I mean, but the Obama policy, we want an ally in the region, though, right? You could want an ally. The United States could want an ally in the Middle East.
Iran was our ally.
See,
before Israel was there, Iran was our legitimate ally. And the problem became that Iran wanted to nationalize its oil supply. And so what does that mean? It means they become competition. Hell, even like that was as early as 1950s, but even as recently as 2016, 2017, Iran was becoming the #1 exporter of oil in the world. Yeah, that's a problem. Because you won't do what we say. We have no control over your government. If we have no control over your government, we don't want you having any control over the petrodollar. And that's what.
Well, they have control over that. But who would you rather ally, I guess, within the region right now? I mean, I stipulate to the 1940s and 1950s analysis, but now, so you like Iran, like so you 100%. Support the Obama policy of being allies with Iran as opposed to the Saudi.
Yeah, I would absolutely. I mean, just from a strategic perspective, but Iran's crushing anybody. Why do you think that everybody just does pop shots at Iran and like they just kind of hope that Iran doesn't like blow them off the face of the earth before America gets there? Like that's like nobody wants to engage Iran militarily like outside of like shooting down little drones and little bombs here and there. If anybody, I don't know if you've ever seen Iran on a map. Iran's bigger than Saudi Arabia.
No, I know.
And
that's the former Persian Empire.
And it's
exactly Persian
Empire. Full of people who have been waiting. You know, basically, it's full of people who've been wishing a motherfucker would for the last 20 or 30 years, preparing for this.
But moment. are you supporting just because? I mean, I agree that they're more powerful than Saudi. They're probably the power in the region, but ideologically, do you think they're closer to us? Do you think, like, you know, from a principled standpoint, are they more allies than say Saudi Arabia?
They're more of a democracy than Saudi Arabia is. Like that's the lie. There's this lie that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and that's like it's a huge lie. It's a massive lie, but we repeat, or at least the establishment repeats it over and over and over again. Iran, although it may have some theocratic aspects to it, but our government has theocracy built into it too, although we try to pretend like it doesn't, just because we say separation of church and state, but that's a lie.
Here's the other thing, though. Like, we support, or we don't support Iran, but when we overthrew the democratically elected leader, Mossadegh, who took over? The theocracy took over. Like,
yeah.
Well, there was a few years in between there.
They gained a lot of the power, and we're against the theocracy, but like they have the power. And the democracy has a little less of the power, but still,
well, whenever Mossadegh got overthrown, that theocracy was who we wanted there. That's why we were cool with it. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. They're pro-America.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the thing. I think that at that time in the 1950s, we don't care about if it's a theocracy or not. We care about whether they were pro-America or not.
Well, that's the thing though. We do care if it's a theocracy because a theocracy increases the likelihood of you being quote unquote pro America, or at least it makes it much easier for you to be paid off. Let me put it like that. Like the truth of the matter is we're allies of Saudi Arabia because I don't have to pay off 5, 6, 7 different politicians, do a bunch of backroom deals just to get the outcome that I want in your region. And that's the truth with the Ukraine, for example. The reason that we are so all of a sudden we go from we never ever talk about Ukraine unless it's a direct conflict between Russia and Ukraine to now Ukraine is helping Trump. Oh my God, Ukraine is officially a problem in the region. You're like, hold up, what happened? Oh, that's right, they elected a populist candidate that was willing to hold the corrupt politicians who had been meddling in the Ukraine over the last 10 to 20 years. He wanted to hold them accountable. He was willing to work with the Trump administration to get it done, and that became the problem. And so when you have a populist candidate, when you have a quote-unquote democratic socialist candidate, and I should caveat by saying there is a catch. You can have a populist democratic candidate if you're in a white Scandinavian or Western European nation. That's cool. That's the catch. But don't be in Venezuela, because then, the socialism all of a sudden just doesn't work out of nowhere. Democratic socialism doesn't work out of nowhere.
If you've got resources,
because Scandinavian nations don't have a lot of oil, so that's why.
They've got that gefilte fish, that fish. Oh my God, all that fish. They got all that fish, and the reindeer. God damn.
But I mean, part of it. I mean, you could say it's partially about oil, but it's also having allies in the region, right? We have Israel.
It's all always been about oil.
But they all hate.
Pretty explicit about that.
John Bolton said it's all about the oil.
Yeah. He wasn't even. He
basically
decided
word
to
for
stop
word.
lying about that. He was like, "It's about oil. It's about resources. They're economic adversaries, and that's what we're going to treat them like." That's what he
in the
said.
United States' best interest if the United States oil companies were involved in the reintroduction of oil production in Venezuela.
Well, yeah, in trade, right? You don't want oil tankers just getting stopped, right? You want to preserve free trade, right? The other thing that we
But what? Hold on, no. That's the problem. We don't believe in free trade. That's a lie. Like free trade is antithetical to what the United States has practiced. NAFTA is inherently opposite of free trade.
Okay, there's
The
some
WTO,
limits, yeah.
like the reason that Brazil has never been able to flourish into its full potential is because we will not allow them to trade freely and grow crops freely and participate equally and freely in the world economy. We've always limited them. And if they've, like, for example, like the one thing that they can do more than anybody else is, like, I think textiles and sugarcane. But like if they wanted to delve into something that we like, so if they wanted to start exporting oil for whatever reason, maybe they are refining oil even to sell to other countries. Like we would have a huge problem with that because that would mean an allyship with Venezuela, and also their economies could begin to complement each other. Then they become an ally, and all of a sudden we're not the big kid on the playground anymore. We're kind of at the whims and of countries that are perfectly capable as being as economically successful as we are if we gave them the opportunity. But we, for some reason, have decided to govern through suppression. Like we've taken capitalism, if there was any good that could have come out of it, and said, you know what, it isn't about competition anymore. It's about suppressing the competition. And we've done it. I mean, we've looked at what we've allowed our monopolies to do. Our corporations, our government are seemingly ran like corporate boardrooms in the stock market. And at the end of the day, it's always been about suppression when it comes to these other corporations, just like how we deal with other governments.
I think there's some truth to that. And one of the things that I like about Tulsi, now that you're talking to a guy that's mostly voted Republican, right? And that's why we've got a little bit of a split here, the progressive and someone who's a little bit more on the right. I like what Tulsi says about small business because she's a little bit distrustful of big business, like traditional liberals have been, because they don't mind government regulation because they have the capital to be able to make sure they check all the boxes of regulations, but then it cuts out the little guy. It cuts out the corner market person. So I'm much more pro small business. So what she said about small business is absolutely excellent.
I'm a huge small business guy. Huge small business.
Yeah. So what I'm surprised is why isn't Tulsi more popular? Because she's actually gaining some of this center right support as well. Like I'm pretty friendly to
Tulsi. Depends on what you define as more popular. To be honest with you, we have a lot of candidates that are claimed to be at 2 or 3%, right, or even 1%. And for some reason, it's Tulsi that's always making headlines. If she pops her gum in the subway, it makes the headline news.
New York Times. Oh my God, she popped her gum in a Russian way. Oh my God, she did it the Russian way.
That's a Russian. Yeah, that's a Russian.
She was drinking Smirnoff. But she doesn't drink, right? I don't think. But
so when you think about it from a realistic perspective, right? Like, I don't know if you all know this, but the Democrats have different polling analysis. Every party does. You have the polls that you release to the public, then you have your internal polling. The internal polling is almost always more accurate than the polls you release to the public because the polls, especially during election season, are usually put out to manufacture consent, whereas the Democrats use the internal polling to strategize for what they realistically have to deal with. I'll give you an example just really quick. Trump was polling very high in February because I had a consultant that actually told me this. The Democratic consultant. He's like, but they're not releasing it. They're not telling anybody, not this February, but in 2018, right before the midterms. So they're not telling everybody because they don't want the Democrats to freak out. But then it got to the point where they were actually beginning to be worried that they wouldn't win back the House or the Senate. So right before the primaries came up, they actually finally released that poll. And people thought that those numbers had grown to be that point. But the truth is, those are the numbers in February. But the Democrats were trying to pretend like he was less popular than he actually was. Because if you say something enough, unfortunately, a lot of people will still believe it. So when you're talking about Tulsi, they keep saying that she's unpopular. And yet there's a poll where she's in New Hampshire, top 4, tie for top 4. Another poll in Wisconsin, she's top 4 at 6%. One Iowa poll had her at 10%. Another one had her at 3%. So the polls that make the headline news, of course, are the ones that are going to favor the establishment. The other polls, and the fundraising, which somehow she ended up raising almost the exact same amount as the previous quarter, yet she didn't make the debates, the third debates. Like, how the hell did you do that? Because her message is resonating, and her base that she's building isn't like, a bag of rice where you just dump it and they just fall out, the moment it hits the sink. It's like glue. They're not going anywhere, and it's only growing. And the more that you meet up with that base and you discover about Tulsi, you're sticking with her. Like, and then that's the base that you need to execute good strategy going forward. And they know this. Understand, everybody else thinks about this in a macro. Can you win the election or can you not win the election? No, it's at what stages do you win your election? Every campaign has a stage where they have to win it. Bernie had to kind of come out the gate on fire because it was always doubted as to whether or not he won. So that was he's executing well for what he was supposed to do. Tulsi was different. Tulsi always had to hit her stride right before the very first couple of Democratic primary states, because she knows that there's going to be various ways they can keep her out of the debates prior to the first elections. However, she only needs to win New Hampshire or Iowa, and all of a sudden she's back in the race. She's all over the news. She's in every debate hereforth, and the story then becomes about her versus whoever else is. Why is the anti-war message resonating? Yeah, they'll try to smear her, but hey, I mean, look, the Pied Piper strategy was implemented last time. We saw how that turned out, and look at what they're doing right now. And they think for some reason that's going to turn out different. When I got word from the campaign just yesterday, they're on pace to crush their previous fundraising quarters because of Hillary Clinton.
That's cool. So I guess don't trust the polls. But go on.
It's the same. This is the same game as they played in 2016. The players are still in the race. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Tom Perez.
Yep.
They haven't. It's like you have the worst team in the NFL, like the Cleveland Browns. You have the
Miami. I would say it's Miami right now.
Right now,
you're out of date.
I'm sorry. Sorry, dude.
I would say I live in Miami. Trust me, we feel like it's Miami too. So.
So you got the worst team in the NFL, Miami, and all you do is you get a new quarterback. You don't change any of the offensive linemen, any of the defensive linemen, any of the coordinators, nothing. You just get a new quarterback, and you expect to win the Super Bowl.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's even worse. It seems like all you do is all the Democrats do is get a new special teams coordinator. Like, that's all they do. And like, they're like, all right, baby, let's go win these 6 Super Bowls like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. It's like, what? I don't think y'all understand how this game is supposed to.
Can you kick a 60-yarder? Woo!
Yeah. So it's like they drink their own Kool-Aid. They watch their own film, and they're like, man, we're so great. We're just so amazing. We're definitely going to win.
So here, it sounds like we'd agree in that the media is many times just like a mouthpiece for the establishment. Now, what does in that the media is Fox News considered part of that media? Like, how would you categorize
they're
Fox
part of the
News?
Establishment, but they're weird. So like, for example, as much as I despise Tucker Carlson's rhetoric sometimes, I can't deny that he has brought on progressives. I can't deny that he's given Tulsi a fair shake every step of the way, even while clarifying, hey, I don't disagree with you on everything, but I do know that if we don't get, if we don't rein in this foreign policy establishment in the military-industrial complex, it don't matter what the hell we want. Neither of us are getting what we would like. Also, anti-corruption. Tucker Carlson is very big on that, and I got to give him credit there, because if he feels like there's a Republican who is, like Lindsey Graham, for example, who is playing along with the establishment in a very disingenuous way, he'll call them out as well. So, but then of course you have sometimes where he's lockstepping with the establishment in certain issues, and you got to call that out when it happens, and I have no problem doing so. But what I'm saying, like Tucker Carlson, somebody that I would have a beer with, I wouldn't like hang out with them all the time. And I don't feel that way about basically anybody on CNN or MSNBC. I feel like everything they do is disingenuous. I feel like everything they do is manufactured. At least with Tucker Carlson, if he says something, I believe he genuinely believes it, even though he's wrong, or I might disagree with him, I should say. And that's the difference. So now Laura Ingraham, whole different world than Tucker Carlson. She is Fox News establishment through and through, like parrot the GOP establishment. But you have at least you have diversity there. What diversity can in opinion? Yeah. What diversity can we say that we have on MSN, CNN, and the like for the left? It's like they're basically different versions of the exact same thing, and it's like to quote Tulsi, it's a rot. Like it's rotten right now. What we're seeing on the left. We used to be the decentralized, anti-corruption, corrupt intelligence community. McCarthyism. That was us. And now the left is the party or the ideology seemingly of authoritarianism. But because we don't have a dictator to point at, because we don't have like a cut and dry black and white example of authoritarianism, we think that we're not engaging in authoritarian tendencies where like that's my candidate no matter what they do. That's who you better worship. If you don't worship them, then you're not on our team. If you disagree with somebody, you have to hate them with your every being because it's only your candidate or your guy or the highway. We have to believe the intelligence community. Why? Because they're the intelligence community. But why? Because they're the intelligence community. Okay, but have they lied in the past? It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we even talking about Russia to the degree that we're talking about them right now? Because the mainstream media told us to, and a bunch of CIA assets got hired on the mainstream media to tell us to talk about Russia.
That's interesting. I told you what the definition of insanity is?
We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Right. That's the mainstream media on the left.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
and they're doing the same thing right now.
Part of why we have Tucker Carlson's epiphany is that on the right, they woke up when Donald Trump got elected. They were asleep. Yes. They were like, oh, they were zombies to the like McCain, Romney, Bush, like the establishment. They were asleep, but now they had a little bit of an epiphany. They woke up.
I would say when he announces candidacy, right? They're right. There's a rising
kind of.
Yeah, like it seems to me what.
I don't know, because people were kind of. I feel like a lot of the right, at least because I was in North Carolina at the time, they were skeptical because they remembered that Trump was a Democrat. So like a lot of them were skeptical from what I saw initially.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe that's not the time.
Calling out the establishment.
But wouldn't you say there's a political insurrection going on parts of the right as well? Like that they're anti-establishment.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of my really good friends is a conservative. His name is Lee Stranahan. He's the co-host for Fault Lines on Sputnik Radio. The man is which was amazing to see happen in real time. He said, Trump was the fighter. Even like Trump helped him wake up a little bit. And then he was like, Trump, I thought was the fighter that this country needed. I felt but having him there helped him see perfectly who was establishment, who wasn't establishment. And even he began to see nuance like, okay, Trump is playing too much ball at the establishment here. I wish we had somebody who was a little bit better on this issue. Then Tulsi walks in. And now you have a lot of the woke, quote unquote, right saying, this is what we meant. Like when she walks in, this is the fighter we wanted. Not like, because when Tulsi says what she says about Hillary, you're not wondering if she's playing like, the marketing game that Trump plays sometimes, where he pretends like he's going to do something, but he really doesn't do something. Like when Tulsi says what she says about Hillary and she's breaking out, fact after fact and statistic after statistic, you're like, okay, this is what I wanted. When Tulsi calls out the DNC directly, this is what I wanted. When Tulsi calls Trump Saudi Arabia's bitch, like straight to his face, This is what I wanted. But then at the same time, it's telling you, but we don't have to be hateful in our disagreements. We don't have to hate someone because they're a Republican. It's if you disagree and their conservative values or why you disagree, they happen to be Republican, then so be it. But I'm not just going to spew hatred at you because you're Republican, nor am I going to vote blue no matter who because they're a Democrat. That's not how things get done, and that is not how this country has operated. When we have been the most efficient and proficient as a nation, it is because the party lines were so blurred that one singular issue could be the deciding factor as to whether or not you won an election. But now we've become so polarized that Tulsi coming in and speaking sanity. Hey, maybe we shouldn't be dicks to each other all the time. Oh, man, she's really a Republican. And now you got even the establishment Republicans. Hey, guys, don't forget she's a Democrat.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay, that's really weird that you brought that up because she's very clear about that. But, but it's the threat, right? The threat that she is breaking down this false dichotomy that most of the country doesn't agree on most of the issues. Like, we do. Like, when it comes to immigration, everybody agrees that there has to be something done. We may not agree on the methodology, but also I think from everybody that I've talked to on the conservative side, when they think about we might disagree about the solutions in the states, right? And it is what it is. However, when I'm like, okay, so let's talk about this. Where do these issues originate? Would you agree with me when I say Hillary Clinton shouldn't have been meddling in Central and South America, which exacerbated a lot of the immigration problems, which also made Obama, as we all know, the deporter in chief? Would you agree with that? Because if we both agree on that, then guess what? The secondary conversation doesn't even have to happen.
Right. Yeah, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
We got to get to that root.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's a completely reasonable thing. And one of the things
we're not even having a thing about like Soros versus the Koch brothers. Do we have conversations about Soros versus the Koch brothers? If Tulsi's anti-corruption and the move to amend bill that she introduced to add an amendment to the Constitution to remove big money from politics completely. Koch brothers and the Soros conversation, we don't even give a damn about who are those guys. Like that's the shit that the left and the right sometimes gets caught up over. The things that we don't have control over. If we focused on the ugly politics, the not sexy politics, like the move to amend bill, like the anti-corruption laws, like the election integrity legislation that Tulsi also introduced, like the fairness in media bill that Tulsi just introduced, to make sure that we have parity when we're having these very complex and convoluted discussions.
What is this fairness in media bill? I'm not aware of this. Do you know much about it?
Yeah, so she introduced a fairness in media bill to reinstate the fairness doctrine that Ronald Reagan allowed the SEC. I want to say it's the FEC.
FTC,
yeah, the
maybe?
SEC. Or the FCC.
FCC.
Is the FCC? Yeah. So
Federal
basically, they repealed it, and it was at the behest of Ronald Reagan's administration. And it was basically part of the reason was to let Fox News just run rampant. We never knew that, of course, that it would turn, because the Democrats kind of just like let it happen.
Well, it was talk radio for first. When Fox News wasn't even around till like 89 or something. I can't remember. But I remember having a talk radio. It was the rise of Rush Limbaugh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was just about to say. I was just about to say that, yeah.
So
but you had a lot of those types of people.
Yeah, and it has a polarizing effect. Well, yeah, the libertarian in me wants to say, okay, look, say what you want. You're allowed to like have your channel say what you want. Now, your personal ethic is you try to be fair, but so it's tough to regulate. I'll look into this because I see arguments on both sides.
But when we say regulating, it's not even trying to like regulate it. It's just saying, hey, bro, if you're gonna you can say whatever you want to. Just have someone else on who disagrees, so that people can make an educated decision. But when you have like the repeal of oh man, I can't remember but basically, so in 2014, Barack Obama and that Congress or that legislator made it so that they entered it into the NDAA, if I recall, where basically it was an amendment, like a little amendment. It scratched out. It legalized propaganda to be used on American people. And of course, I think everybody agrees. I mean, yeah, we used to see attempts to manufacture consent in the past. What we have seen over the last 3 years is disgusting. No, I've never seen anything like this. It's
terrible.
Life.
It's absolutely terrible.
Whether it be the Russiagate scandal, whether it be the events after the Russiagate scandal, even now with this impeachment, whether it be the Ukraine, where you watch a debate and they're like, well, everything that Trump said is a lie, Biden. We all know that. You're absolutely not guilty of anything. But, I'm going to ask this question just so I can seem like I'm fair. Like how are you going to say that? That's a literal lie. Everything that Trump said, which is a rare thing, but everything that he said about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Ukraine and Hillary Clinton and the State Department and Biden actually trying to use America's assets to cripple the government. They didn't play ball. Like, that's all true. But they just told with the national audience, they looked at the camera and said, everything Trump said about you and Hunter Biden in regards to Ukraine is a lie. What the hell kind of world is this? Like, how do you go forward without addressing
we need more truth
like
tellers
that we just let slip by?
Yeah, and we need more truth tellers, don't you think?
Trump lies so much that the one time he tells the truth, everyone has their hand over their eyes. Like, monkey see nothing. I see nothing. I don't know. This must be a lie. This must be a lie because everything else.
You know what I was impressed at? I was to that effect. I was impressed with the fact. Whenever I found out that he had tried to initiate this investigation almost immediately after he became president, I was impressed. Because I'm like, wow, he actually was telling the Justice Department to do their damn job. And it had, because we didn't even know. Remember, at this time, we were all convinced Biden wasn't going to run because he just made it a point to keep saying, I'm not running. I'm staying home with my family. The thing with his son, like everything that had taken place. So it looked like, okay, Trump is actually just doing what he said he was going to do, which would be, quote unquote, draining the swamp. The only reason that it didn't happen sooner was because there was a corrupt Hillary Clinton propped government in the Ukraine at the time, and they just got a populist candidate who was willing to expose the corruption that had been taking place between that government and the oligarchy there and the United States and Obama's administration. That's the only thing that changed. Yeah. And so now it's risky because people forget. Not forget. Most people don't know. This isn't just Biden implicated in this. This is the vice president, right? You have Biden. You have his son. You have oligarchs in the Ukraine that would get exposed. You have Hillary, who, and that's a different conversation for a different day, but had a huge part in making sure that Hunter Biden can get on that energy board, had a vested interest in the region. Also, you have Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, who are using state-sponsored propaganda from our State Department to do soft coups and hard coups in the Ukraine. Ukraine is also a big part of the Uranium One deal. Nancy Pelosi has connections to that entire situation. So, like, you're talking about a domino effect that could affect the entire Democratic establishment. Like, that's what we are seeing take place. So, of course, instead of saying, well, what did Hunter Biden do and why was it wrong? We're saying he wasn't guilty of anything. This is just a ploy to stop Trump's biggest competition. And like everybody who has any sort of intelligence knows, if Biden goes up against Trump, he will get demolished.
You know what? Here's
another interesting. It won't even be a competition.
A small factoid on this. I wasn't really sure because when you see $50,000 a month from like the Energy Board Commission, like I couldn't really put that in context. But I actually talked to people that sit on these boards, and they're like, that's actually an outrageous number in straight cash. Yeah. Generally, with these kind of boards, you're paid much, much lower, but then you're paid in performance. So if the company, but just to get that kind of money, like it is way outside of the standard. And I'm not sure a lot of people know that.
Hunter Biden was taking a bigger paycheck so he could split up however much he needed to amongst the people who were also involved. Like he was just the guy, you know what I'm saying? Like the guy with the big account not connected to the government that wouldn't be traced back by the government because he's a private citizen.
It's essentially a piggy bank.
It's unusual. Yeah, the fact that it's just highly unusual is suspicious in itself.
$50,000 a month is insane. That is it. Like, and I'm curious. And I never looked this up. I wonder what his net worth is. Because if it's like not 100,000, like 50 million at this point, bro, what have you been spending your money on?
No, I mean, it's part of Ukrainian culture. Also, is a bribery culture. I mean, there's a culture of bribery over there. That's part of it. It's like beer and cheese in Wisconsin. Just how you do business.
But beer and cheese is cooler than bribery.
Romania,
yes, 100%.
Those are three countries that had the toughest time getting admission into the EU because of the level of corruption in those three countries. Yeah. So yeah.
This is good. And Mike, forgive me if I shift the conversation, but I want to ask Niko, do you think like the establishment Democrats, are they out of touch with Black Americans in your opinion?
Yeah.
And in what way? Because I think so too, but I wanted you I want your analysis on this.
So the problem with so just from a Black man's perspective, right? We go through a certain set of conditions at large that render us trying to keep, like, I got to take care of me and mine because it's about putting food on the table and I can't worry about anybody else. The problem is when we finally do get something, it's huge for us because it's a rare opportunity, statistically speaking. And so what they've done is they've used the oppression that a lot of these people were part of creating and saying they tease you with this title. They tease you with this check. Hey, man, don't worry about them. Just take this check for you and yours. I got them. They're going to be all right. And they individualize us. They take advantage of the fact that we don't know if we're ever going to have another opportunity, especially if you reach a certain point and they hit you with that fork in the road. You're either going to play ball or we're going to crush you to make sure you never have an opportunity.
Well, give me an example. Like, what are you talking about? What's the fork in the road?
So the fork in the road would be something. What Tulsi faced. I mean, she's not Black, but I'm just giving you that example. Or Andrew Gillum. That'd be a better example. Andrew Gillum gets Bernie's nomination, runs on Medicare for All in Florida as a governor candidate, and then he wins the primary. Then Debbie Wasserman Schultz hits his line. Hillary Clinton hits his line. And no, it's not going to be any Medicare for All. He takes it off his website, access to affordable health care, starts doing fundraisers with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, starts doing fundraisers with Hillary Clinton. All of a sudden, his rhetoric goes from very direct, very policy-based to flowery. And all of a sudden, DeSantis is just a racist. He's just a racist. Why? Because he said monkey it up one time. That was the only example that they could use. So, because when he hit that fork in the road, it was, you're going to play Debbie Wasserman Schultz again. Because it wasn't just that. Remember, Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to fundraise because she was running against Tim Canova. So if the guy who got Bernie Sanders' endorsement is all of a sudden starting to be seen with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They're like, oh, well, maybe it is Debbie Wasserman. Maybe Debbie Wasserman Schultz isn't all that bad. So you got like, there's various ways that this happens. Another one would be what they tried to do with Ilhan Omar. With Ilhan Omar, it was all love, right? First Muslim woman, first hijabi, Somalian refugee. Love her. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. Yeah, AIPAC is paying off all of our congressmen. Whoa, you're anti-Semitic. And if you don't stop telling the truth, then we're going to crush you because we know we can take advantage of the fact that you are Muslim, that you are hijabi, that you are black, and that you are a Somalian refugee. And the Democrats and Republicans join in on that one. And so after a while, you get worn down. You get worn down, and the constant threat of your family not having, not enjoying the success that could come from if you were outside of the political world, like just your natural talents and abilities, you are kind of like put in a weird situation. So it almost makes you sympathize to a degree, but the Democrats take advantage of this all too often. That's the only way.
So they want the diversity of race, but not the diversity of thought, right? Like, yeah.
And even the diversity of race is, best believe that's limited. That is very limited to non-influential positions.
The one rule
why
all insiders must follow. I read the quote in Yanis Varoufakis' book. The one rule that all insiders must follow is don't mess with other insiders. Do not mess with other insiders, because then you are now an outsider. If you mess with insiders when you're in the club, they kick you out of the club and you don't have any power anymore.
Yeah. And because especially if they do like every other type of Gestapo or like mafioso like type of organization does, they get your hands dirty. So like if you're, for example, even Bernie and Tulsi are both kind of, they both aren't perfect. But the thing is, we've already reconciled with Tulsi where her imperfections were, and we've already acknowledged her evolution of those imperfections. However, Bernie may eventually be faced with the issue of the Democrats getting his hands dirty that a lot of people don't know about, and that's how they get you. Like, why wouldn't he come at Hillary Clinton, for example, when he was defending Tulsi? Like,
he did come
it was the easy. He didn't call Hillary Clinton out by name, but once again, Hillary Clinton's a private citizen. So when he wouldn't go after the DNC, whatever, they're running the election, got it. But remember, he wrote a letter to Center for American Progress defending both Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker, and it was an open letter where he had no problems, no quarrels with calling Neera Tanden by name, calling Center for American Progress out by name and defending Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker by name. With Tulsi, it took days for it to happen. And then, of course, he didn't even really, what happened to, it's my good friend. None of that. It was, she served this country and that's wrong to call her an asset. That was, don't get me wrong, I was still happy he did it. But I'm just saying, you can see that there is some hesitancy because he knows they do have something on him where a lot of that stuff can start getting leaked to some progressive outlets, maybe to a Republican outlet. For example, he voted for to overthrow Assad twice in 2015.
Yeah.
Whereas Tulsi introduced a bill to stop it from happening. So all the way back in 2015, Tulsi was ahead of the game here. So that contradicts his rhetoric, right? Because now he's like, we can't, get stuck in another regime change quagmire and all that good stuff. So it's like, why were you trying to get us stuck in another regime change quagmire then? So those are things that they do to when you're out, even if you're a quote unquote outsider, if you ever wanted to be a part of that game, you've had to get your hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think a lot more black Americans have become free thinkers then on this issue? Because right now Biden's still polling very high among black voters.
Older black Americans, though. We don't count those.
But what I'm saying is, I see a trend
below the age of 40 that's voting for Joe Biden.
Well, I see a trend certainly on the internet. Like this is on the left and right, but you see a lot more like independent black voters that aren't going to let the establishment think for them, regardless of who it is, and they're going to go out and say what they want. And I'm seeing more and more of that. And I just wonder if you're seeing that the same, and what you make of that.
The independent. Absolutely. And I would say that Bernie right now has the best chance of calling the most black vote. Like that, he is. I mean, Nina is his secret weapon. Like Nina Turner is his secret weapon, and he has been implementing her and utilizing her wisely to the point where I think he now has the most endorsements in South Carolina. So he's killing it, right?
Yeah.
There was a
she
poll
said
that
some
came
weird
out.
things in the past, though. You know, like, but do you think she's like? There's a few. If you look in like kind of right wing Twitter circles, there's pictures or videos of her just saying like this absurdly woke stuff. You know
that's part of, you can judge it as you will based off of your personal beliefs, but the woke stuff, which you may consider crazy, but that's also what leads her to thinking like when she started running Our Revolution, for example, she said, I don't care if you're Green Party, Republican, Democrat, purple, blue, or yellow, are you the most progressive candidate? Then you're going to get our endorsement. It has nothing to do with party politics, and that's the problem. The Democrats want you on the plantation, but we're not working for them anymore. We're not on the plantation for them anymore. And that caught a lot of backlash from Black Democrats who know exactly what they mean because they are on that plantation. It sucks to face yourself in the mirror sometimes and acknowledge that, but a lot of the Black Democrats are on the plantation. So, it's a different flavor for everybody, and she might not be everybody's flavor. But best believe, when it comes to the average Black American, like the Black American who is trying to decipher who's full of, in the Democratic, on the left, I should say, when they're trying to decipher what's bullshit and what's not, Nina puts it into very good perspective coming from that plantation and saying, these are all the ways they will try and manipulate you. But you have to see past that. Me personally, I have my own unique, take on that issue. Although I was never part of the Democratic establishment, I have been courted by the Democratic establishment. And I know what it looks like to be courted by the Democratic establishment. I know all the tools that they use. Same thing. They promise you these titles. Don't you want to be the youngest this? Don't you want to be the first Black that? Don't you want to be like Loretta Lynch? What's the point of being the first or second or the first Black female attorney general? And then when you finally get your moment of truth to show that you are going to hold anybody and everybody accountable if they break the law, you succumb to party pressure.
Yeah.
Like that's the reason I believe that AGs should be, just like in every other situation, attorney generals are elected. But for the White House, for some reason, it's appointment.
You're right.
That's
State
ridiculous.
AGs are often elected. Right? That's interesting.
Imagine if attorney generals had to campaign across the country on their legal record, bro.
Yeah, I know it's interesting. I'll take another look
at the lower levels, huh?
I'll take another look at Nina because the only thing I saw was some sound bites, and like I think all of us know that if you see 2 sound bites on Twitter, you're not getting a full analysis. So I'll take a look at that. Thanks.
All right. Well, I think you have an interview at 8.
I did do it, but I do gotta get going. For those of you who are going to be at Politicon, I will be there. I'm flying out tomorrow. So,
nice. And at Politicon, are you speaking alone? Are you on a panel? I
might be on a couple of panels. Unfortunately, I couldn't debate because they discovered me a little bit too late. But they took care of me. They got me VIP, and I got they gave me a list of people I could bring VIP. I'm going to be hanging out with all the other cool political people, and most of them who I don't like probably, but it's cool.
Well, that's cool. You'd be great on the debate stage because, like you said, you look at the opposite side and you say, how can we get past this? Not you're my enemy. And
exactly.
I
I'm
don't
the
care.
only one that was openly willing to debate. I'm like, they're like, oh, are you left wing? Or I was like, oh, I don't care. You can put me up against anybody. I'll debate the left and the right.
I love it.
Because, I mean, to be completely honest with you, both can be full of shit sometimes. They can be self-aggrandizing and self-righteous. And I'm not about that. I'm about solutions. And if you're not about solution-based thinking, then you're going to fall into that partisan trap that we set for ourselves sometimes. And that's where I'll take advantage of.
Yeah, we don't always agree politically, but you're an honorable man and you're honest. And I appreciate that take.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
So, all right, Niko, thanks so much. We really appreciate you coming on. It's great to have, sometimes even though this guy's as progressive as they come, we get bashed as this right wing play. So it's good to have a solid guy on there and keep us honest. And you're gonna. I'll look into some stuff. I appreciate your input.
Hey man, you're not the only one that gets bashed, right? Basically, if you ever speak out against the establishment, you're right wing. Yeah. Like that's just. And that's the new thing, right? Back in the day, which is ironic because the establishment left. That's, by the way, which was funded by the Koch brothers in the 90s through the New Democratic Leadership PAC or something to that extent. They have taken all the McCarthyist tactics. Remember, back in the day, what did they call Martin Luther King for standing up to imperialism? Oh, he's a communist.
Oh yeah, he's a red. Yeah.
Black Panthers. Domestic terrorists, communists. That's why they're doing it. They're working with Russia. Angela Davis, some of the greatest thinkers of our time. Henry Wallace, the CIA and the intelligence communities. These are right wing, not like the real conservative. This is between conservative and right wing. And these are right wing authoritarians trying to just grasp power and however whatever way they can get it. And everybody on the other side, if you disagree with them, you were one of those on the other side. And now we see the Democratic Party engaging in the same rhetoric. We critiqued the Trumans and the Dulles brothers of the world. We critiqued the Reagans of the world, and the people who thought like them and behaved like them. We used to critique that stuff, and now it's like I'm seeing it happen in real time. But luckily, we have something now that they didn't have back then, which we have multiple platforms where, even though the suppression is there too, I feel like that message of individualism, thinking for yourself, but thinking also in the spirit of united prosperity. Like that is the fire that was started and ignited, in my opinion, by both, if we're being real, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. We can argue about how genuine one of the other was, but that was kind of sparked. And now I feel like we're at we're at the climax. And it's like the person who is here representing, in a way, both sides is this 38-year-old woman from Hawaii that is super soft spoken, super shy, but yet every time you test her gangster, you're plastered all over the headlines because she has that Bernie Sanders unity in her, but she has that Trump fire in her. And that combination of both of those plus her own personal evolution, in my opinion, is very emblematic of everything that we have seen take place in the last 4 years as far as our growth as a country going forward.
All right. Very interesting analysis, Niko. Very interesting. Don't bet against the house. Go see him at Politicon. It's great talking to you.
Please. Thank you guys for having me on.
All right. Take care. All right, cool.